We got breaking news here on the Pittsburgh Steelers on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith coming to the Steelers, Minkah Fitzpatrick going to the Dolphins. I'm breaking it all down here on this emergency episode. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast, where up is down, left is right, and nobody knows what the heck is going on with Omar Khan because the Pittsburgh Steelers have traded in a blockbuster trade. They've sent away Minkah Fitzpatrick and a fifth-round pick from the 2026 NFL draft the 2027 NFL draft, so not even this upcoming draft, for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith and a seventh-round pick from the Miami Dolphins. This is a blockbuster trade. We are going to get through a lot in this emergency episode. We will have our full episode coming out later tonight. But I got to say, I was wrong. I thought there was no way they would do something like this. I thought that the Steelers were going to be cool with what their secondary was. They were like, oh, we'll be fine. Not only was I wrong that they would go get Jalen Ramsey. And I have to admit, I thought, hey, it'd be nice. I like Jalen Ramsey. I've liked him since he entered the NFL. He's a really good player. I love his attitude. I love his demeanor. But I thought there was no way. They're like, they got so many other things they got to work. They got to get wide receiver 2. They got to go do this. They got to do that. They're not going to go get Jalen Ramsey. And then they went and did that. And not only do they do that, but they trade away one of their pillar players involved in it, and that's Minkah Fitzpatrick, the multi-time all-pro star safety for the team, who has had a couple down years, but still has been a pillar of this defense. I did not see this coming. This is Omar Khan wheeling and dealing with this Steelers roster to get change. You cannot say the Steelers are stagnant. You cannot say the Steelers aren't taking swings, aren't making changes, are just settling for the same old. They are making moves. They are being aggressive. They are taking big chances. And that's exactly what this trade is. And on top of it, you get Jonnu Smith. We'll get to Jonnu Smith in a bit. That's also another thing that is just wild to me that he's somehow involved in this. But the Steelers getting Jalen Ramsey basically for Minkah Fitzpatrick in the straight-up involvement here. Is this a good thing for the Steelers? I got to be honest with you. I don't know. I think I've been one of the people, if you've watched this channel and Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, I have been a staunch advocate for the position that Minkah Fitzpatrick is not washed, that he was in a position where, hey, teams were picking at Dante Jackson, at a young Joey Porter Jr., at a weakened slot cornerback position. And so they didn't need to really go at him as much in the Steelers secondary. And that didn't allow him to play Minkah ball, as he has talked about, which in his time with the Steelers, since they traded for him from the Miami Dolphins in 2019, he had been an elite player for most of the time that he'd been in Pittsburgh. And that, to me, was like, okay, I can see the film. I can see what he's doing. Oftentimes in the secondary, he is keeping the play in front of them. Whenever there's a big play going deep, quarterbacks couldn't take the deep shot because he was there. And so it forced teams to have to dink and dunk their way around the Steelers instead of just taking the top off the defense like we had seen in years when Minkah Fitzpatrick wasn't the free safety and they were kind of relying on some sketchy play at the free safety position. So I thought for sure, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's not going to go anywhere. They like him. I mean, heck, I just wrote a story for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette where about a month ago when we were looking at OTAs and I was talking to Minkah Fitzpatrick, he literally told me he was talking about, when it comes to communication, and I'll try to find this clip for the show when we do it in full. He talked about how if we're talking on communication, when I say thumbs up, you say thumbs up. If I say thumbs down, you say thumbs down, and we go and we do this, and he's like, and he said, quote, if you don't want to do it, talking about communication, you're not going to be here. We're instilling that in everybody. Minkah Fitzpatrick, a team captain basically for the Pittsburgh Steelers, was saying, that was June 4th, not even a month ago, within the month of June, he was saying after a Steelers practice that if you don't want to do it, you're not going to be here. And then he's the one that's not in Pittsburgh. That got me asking a lot of questions because, in my opinion, it was not him that was the problem in the secondary as much last year. It was more Cam Sutton. It was more Dante Jackson when he got injured. And then the Steelers didn't have enough answers at cornerback. And then it led to communication breakdowns. And that led to just exposures in the defense. Because now your secondary, your safety room is going to be Deshaun Elliott, and it's going to be Juan Thornhill, who you traded for, who I thought would be a great third safety option, but now he basically is your free safety unless another move is coming. But let's look at the bigger part of this move. They're adding Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, a former All-Pro cornerback himself. He's still been a pretty good cornerback the last several years. He missed the Pro Bowl last year with the Dolphins, but that broke a string of 4 straight years of being a Pro Bowl corner. He has 3 times been a first-team All-Pro corner in the NFL. He's 31. He'll be 31 in October this year, so he's still within like the prime range of his career. He's still not over the hill, but Jalen Ramsey adding to this defense. Now, as I said before, when people ask me, do you think they're going to get Jalen Ramsey? I didn't think so. I thought that they'd be happy with Joey Porter Jr., with Darius Slay Jr., and Corey Trice, the junior secondary. We talked about this, and I thought they'd with Corey Trice with these guys that they're gonna be fine with their depth. They're not fine with their depth. They're saying we're going and we're adding, we're being aggressive. And to me, this signals a new day when it comes to Omar Khan. And not that this one move does it by itself, but it continues to show Omar Khan is not resting on his laurels. He's not sitting here and saying, "Well, we got players. We're just gonna watch and see how this plays out." He is making big swings in the Steelers front office. I mean, you think back even just the past few years, the turnover this team has shown. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. If you had said to me that when the Steelers were 7-3, were they 7-3 in 2023? With Kenny Pickett before they lost, or was it 7-4, whatever it was they were before they went on that losing streak with Kenny Pickett, and then they got injured. He got injured, and then Mason Rudolph had to come in and save the season after they went to 7-7. If you had told me before that Kenny Pickett injury that in the next 2 years the Steelers quarterbacks would be Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, I would have said you're on crack cocaine. I would have said you're on drugs and you need to go get some help. But maybe that was me who was on drugs, because here's Omar Khan coming in and saying, "Nah, we're not settling for things. We're making big moves." George Pickens gone, DK Metcalf in. These are unprecedented times as far as the Steelers front office. And here's the thing: I'm not sure if this is good just yet. I like the addition of DK Metcalf. I think he's a professional wide receiver. I think he's a playmaker. I'd say that these other moves have been good for the most part. I think Omar Khan, the way that he's wheeling deal to get draft picks, I think that the players that he's added, I think they're trying to build a locker room culture that's going to be for the future of the Steelers. But to me, Minkah Fitzpatrick was one of those locker room guys. People got behind that guy. He was a leader. He was the guy that in practice, he'd be there every single practice, and he would do his reps. And then as soon as he came up, as soon as his reps were done, they went to second team defense. He would stand behind the entire defense and watch everything with the defensive coordinator, Terrell Austin. And they'd be going like, "Okay, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to work with." Like, you could see him being in coach mode there. Jalen Ramsey comes in, and I don't know Jalen Ramsey personally like that. I haven't seen him work up close like that. I have a ton of respect for his work because I have seen his highlights. I have seen his plays. I got to do an in-depth film study of how he played last year specifically. But this man has pressed. This man has played off. This man can play zone. This man can be man. He can make plays on the football. And he can line up wherever on the defense. And this is where I think it's going to be really interesting with Jalen Ramsey. Is where does he line up? Because some people, I did a live stream for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and some people say, "Oh, he might play safety." I don't think Jalen Ramsey's coming here to play safety. I think if you were getting Jalen Ramsey to play safety, why wouldn't you just keep Minkah Fitzpatrick? You're getting Jalen Ramsey to play corner, and where he plays corner could be a very interesting point for the Pittsburgh Steelers in what they want to do moving forward. Keep it here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to keep talking about this move because this is blockbuster stuff. More Jalen Ramsey, where he plays in the Steelers defense, Jonnu Smith, all that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. I am still befuddled, baffled, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, hit him whatever Malcolm X line you got from the movie. Jalen Ramsey is a Pittsburgh Steeler. This is nuts. Now, where does Jalen Ramsey play? That's the question I posed before we went to that break. When you look at his slot, his position alignment last season, he played 728 snaps outside corner. He played 185 snaps in the slot. That is a decent amount to have played in the slot. Now, I'll also point this out. there are advanced statistic databases that conflict with each other with how often a player lined up in different positions. For example, if I go to sports information systems, they have charted 256 coverage snaps for Jalen Ramsey in the slot. Clearly, that's more than 185 that Pro Football Focus says. That's where those numbers came from. And then I went back and I looked. I was like, well, let me just see where Darius Slay played last season. Now, if you go to Pro Football Focus, last season it says he only played 5 snaps in the slot. But if you go to sports information systems, they say he played 133 coverage snaps in the slot. So when we say coverage snaps, that's not just snaps. That's specifically plays where he was in coverage, not just a pass play, but one where he didn't blitz, where he was playing in coverage. So there's some discrepancies as far as how often these guys lined up in the slot or not. I will say this. I think that when you look at Jalen Ramsey's career, he has been able to move around a bit more of late, and because he's not young anymore. He's 30. He'll be 31 in a couple months here. But I do think he'd be the piece that you'd want to move around a bit more and make your X factor in the secondary. This guy is a more recent All-Pro. This guy's more in his prime than Darius Slay, who's 34 years old. Also, when I look at Jalen Ramsey, whereas he had 185 snaps in the slot according to Pro Football Focus in 2024 and 2022. So that was the last time Jalen Ramsey was an All. He wasn't All-Pro. Last time he was All-Pro was 2021, but it was his last year with the Rams in 2022. Jalen Ramsey that year played 213 snaps in the slot. I have to think he's going to be the guy they move around and try to make offenses guess where is he lining up, because you don't want to catch Jalen Ramsey in the wrong spot because he might make a play on the football. I still think he can be that kind of a guy. And again, I like Jalen Ramsey. I like just the way that he plays. I just didn't think the Steelers would make this kind of a move because Omar Khan, I know he's been aggressive. I didn't think he'd be this aggressive. And this is huge as far as blockbusters in the changing of how the defense works, because now I have to rethink how the Steelers secondary will work, how the Steelers defense will work. The Steelers traditionally, they would trust Minkah Fitzpatrick in the back end of the defense to play center field. And if you threw the deep ball and he was around there, it was a dangerous move, because if he was in the area, he could make a play on the ball and it would be a problem for you. And then we knew when they added Juan Thornhill, I said, hey, Juan Thornhill is a realistic safety who can flex into that deep safety role to allow Minkah Fitzpatrick to be a roaming player for the Steelers, where he might line up in the slot. He might line up a strong safety. He might line up a free safety. He might line up in the box. You don't know where he's lining up, but he's going to be effective wherever he does it. And I thought, that's the move here, because now you have Deshaun Elliott as strong, Minkah as a roamer, and Juan Thornhill can interchange with being a guy who helps up in the box and also plays deep safety. And in that way, you could just keep offenses on guessing games with a safety position. Well, that's gone. Now I'm in a position where I think you might be seeing more 2 deep looks from the Steelers, where Juan Thornhill and Deshaun Elliott are going to be guys like that, and the Steelers are going to be aggressive with their corners. They're going to be saying, "Hey, press these guys: Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr. All 3 of you are going to be on the field at the same time." I don't think Jalen Ramsey is coming to necessarily replace anyone specifically. I think he is coming to play a lot alongside Joey Porter Jr. and alongside Darius Slay. I think what's probably going to happen is Ramsey and Porter are probably going to line up on the outside in like base 3-4 formations. But remember, a base 3-4 formation is not like what it used to be in the NFL. The Steelers line up a ton in nickel and dime and other formations other than the 3-4. So I would be shocked if the Steelers don't roll out in a lot of nickel packages, and especially with these guys. But I would think that what you're going to probably do is you're probably going to have Ramsey and Slay rotating a lot in the slot with where they could line up and keep teams guessing, and maybe also work in Joey Porter Jr. into that rotation, and just make it so that, hey, as an offense, you got to guess where our guys are and where you're getting your certain matchups if you're facing the Steelers secondary. And then the safeties behind them, maybe they're playing a little bit more conservative. Maybe you're saying, hey, this is going to allow the Steelers to say, hey, we're going to come out, we're going to have 5 guys in coverage, 3 corners, 2 safeties. They're going to take away the primary officer. Maybe we'll throw in a Patrick Queen at linebacker to help against a tight end or a running back. But we're sending 5-6 guys every single time when it's passing downs, and we're going to stuff the run. We're going to blitz the quarterback, and we're going to trust our DBs to win on their one-on-ones and not try to do a whole lot extra there. That could be the Steelers defense. I think that could be interesting. I just don't know. Does this fit the long-term culture plan? Because to me, there's also the element of leadership that we've been talking about. I think that's been such a big part of what the Steelers are doing. I also note this, by the way. If you're thinking, oh, the Steelers are all in, because I'm seeing a lot of national people say, oh, the Steelers are all in. They're putting all their chips in the middle of the table. They're going for it all. This is the year. They're making that. Not really. Not yet, at least. Because here's the thing. They swapped Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey. Minkah Fitzpatrick was a leader, but he was not. That's not like giving up a first-round pick in the draft class that you think is the year to go get the quarterback. If the Steelers had given up a second-round pick for Ramsey, then you might have sold me, because then I'm like, that's going to really hurt your chances to trade up for a quarterback in 2025, not in 2026. But not only did they not do that, did they not give up a high pick, the pick swap between these two teams is a 2027 pick swap. It has no impact on the 2026 draft, which continues to show me this team has its eyes on the future. Omar Khan is still looking at, nope, plan is still get that quarterback in 2026. We still got a first round, a second round, 3/3, 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6, 2 7s. We are going to work some sort of package deal and to go up and be aggressive and go get our guy. I could totally see that still being part of the equation here. But how long do you expect Jalen Ramsey to be part of this equation? Is this sort of a Joe Hayden move where he's coming in for basically 3 years and you're saying, hey, we're just hoping to get a really good cornerback to pair with our guys, and you're hoping Joey Porter Jr. works out? And hey, if Joey Porter Jr. ascends the way we would talk about, Jared Alexander, secondary coach, getting in there, getting in with the Steelers, we talked about how pointed he's been on the details and how trying to get everyone on the same page. If he's able to make that unit work, that could be really interesting, because if they're being able to be aggressive in their coverage, that could change a lot of things for the Steelers secondary, and that could make things work for the next few years. And hey, when they trade up and get that quarterback, then maybe they're coming into an elite defense. Maybe there's something about this that's different. But I do have to say, there are big questions. I'm not saying this is a surefire move. You're not going to hear me say, oh yeah, this is A+ trade. This is definitely going to work out. I think there's a good chance it could work out. The Steelers have won a lot of trades recently. They've been able to offload talent that's dropped off at the right time. They've been able to add talent that's helped them situationally. They've been able to find guys that, again, they've made 4 of the last 5 playoffs in years where a lot of people predicted them to be last place in the division. So they've been finding a way to do that. So now you add, you're bringing in Jalen Ramsey to play with this defense. It's going to stylistically change what they do. They're going to ask more of their cornerbacks. They're going to have them be more aggressive. I think it's going to lead to more blitzing. It's going to lead to more attacking. And that could be a very different style of defense than we've seen the last 3 years under Terrell Austin, which, again, hasn't been bad. Like, I know people think, oh, well, the Steelers haven't won a playoff game and they haven't won the division the last few years, so they've been a bad defense. They haven't been a bad defense. They've been actually a good defense. They're a top 10. When you're top 10, you're a very good defense. But I think where Steelers fans often get stuck, and this is where I say Steelers fans are spoiled, a top 10 defense is a very good defense. Top 5 defense is when I consider you elite. The Steelers have not been elite for some years. Since 2020, 2019, the last years of like Keith Butler's reign, when Minkah Fitzpatrick came to the Steelers and he joined a team that was basically ready to go with Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden at cornerback, and TJ Watt was coming into his age, and Bud Dupree was in his prime, and Cam Hayward was in his prime, and Stephon Tuitt was in his prime, and they had all these other pieces that were working for them. I think that there's a chance that they're trying to form something like that. Because, as I've said before, I like their linebacker situation. Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, Cole Holcomb. That's good depth. And Malik Harrison behind them, that's good depth across the board at linebacker. You got run stuffers, you got coverage guys, you got guys that can help in sideline to sideline. Cool. They've added Derek Harmon to the D-line. You got Keanu Benton, you hope steps up this year. Cam Hayward's still around. You added some free agents like Dan Aquale for depth. Okay, that can be cool. You still got TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, presumably TJ Watt shows up. We talked about that on the full episode that came out this morning. Okay, cool. Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig's there, and then you added Jack Story. So your defense could legit be loaded this year. But I still think they might want to go out and get somebody. They might want to go out and get an extra safety. And I know someone's saying, well, what about wide receiver 2? I hear you. We'll get to that in the next segment because I want to talk about Jonnu Smith. But when I look at this team and I say, man, like, if I'm looking at this roster now with Minkah Fitzpatrick gone, they got to add another safety, because that 3 safety rotation I thought was going to be such a good weapon for them. And I thought Juan Thornhill was a good 3rd safety option. And what's crazy is, if you're thinking, like, I don't think this was something the Steelers had in their long-term plans for too long. I think this was something that sort of came of late where they were like, we like this opportunity. Let's make this happen. And I think that's what led to this move, because when we asked Alan Saunders, who's a guest on this show, asked Mike Tomlin towards the end of his press conference before the NFL draft about getting a third safety. And he's like, that's why we got Juan Thornhill. And he kind of left it at that. He didn't really answer it further than that. That to me at the time, so they're locked in at safety. They're not getting Nick Eamon-Worry out of South Carolina, who I really loved. I thought he was a fantastic guy. But now, but that's because they thought Minkah Fitzpatrick was going to be here. And again, Minkah Fitzpatrick was just talking just a few weeks ago at OTAs about how if you don't want to communicate on our level, you're not going to be here. And now again, he's not here. This was not, I don't think, a long-term plan. I think something came up that changed the Steelers up and forced and kind of made them say, hey, we want to make this move here, because this is not typical Steelers front office moves. But hey, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they're changing things up and they're setting the pace for how they want to do things. We've talked a lot about the defensive side of this. Let's talk about the Jonnu Smith side of this, because to me that's not as huge, but like it asks so many other questions about what the Steelers are really doing on offense. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here talking about all things Steelers with these blockbuster trade. Again, the Steelers send away Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 7th-round pick. They get back Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, and they send away a 5th-round pick. They get back a 7th-round pick in a 2027 draft swap there. But we talked about the Jalen Ramsey aspect of this. Now, I also want to point out, I have not watched a whole bunch of film yet. That's going to come after this reaction episode. I did a quick reaction, a short reaction for you guys on YouTube for Locked On. I did a live stream for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette with Brian Batko. If you want to see more of my rawness from this move, go back to that clip, the Post-Gazette channel. But we're also doing this video, and then I still will have a full Tuesday episode that comes out on top of this video that further examines this. But right after this, I'm going to dive in the film. I'm going to look at Jalen Ramsey and give you more of my more advanced thoughts where I've had time to collect, okay, this is who he is now. This is what they can do with him. This is what I think could work with the secondary. We'll get into that later. But let's talk about Jonnu Smith. Again, did not see this coming. I had been saying Drew Rosen. I got to apologize to Drew Rosenhaus. I thought that man was blowing smoke. I thought this was straight up just, yeah, guys, my client who clearly wants a new deal with the Miami Dolphins, he's really getting interest from the Steelers because I really want this negotiations to go well. So I was kind of like, man, I ain't falling for this time. Like, nah, I ain't doing this. And that's not what it was. The Steelers really were interested in Jonnu Smith. So those reports were real. So I got to come back and say, hey, Chris is triple wrong with this. I didn't think they'd trade away from Fitzpatrick. I didn't think that they would trade for Jalen Ramsey. I didn't think they'd trade for a Jonnu Smith. I just didn't think that they were in the cards. Now, I like Jalen Ramsey. Jonnu Smith's interesting. Jonnu Smith is interesting, and that's where I want to dive into with this next segment. Now, this last year has been his best year. He'll be 30 years old at the end of training camp, August 22nd. So he's at his stage. He's coming off his best NFL career. Last year for the Dolphins, he caught 88 passes off of 111 targets for 884 receiving yards, caught for 8 touchdowns. Those are all franchise records in catches, yards, and touchdowns for a Dolphins tight end. So he's coming off a really big year. He wanted a pay increase. Supposedly, I think he got a 1-year, $12 million extension from the Steelers in this deal. I think something like that. We'll go over more contract stuff when we learn that. This is a very raw reaction to all these things happening. But what does this mean for the Steelers offense? Because now, one, he does get to reunite with the OC that he's worked with probably the most in his career, and that's, of course, Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith coached him in his last 2 years with the Titans in 2019 and 2020. He then brought him to the Falcons in 2023, so he's had 3 years with him. Now he's with him with the Steelers. So this will be his 4th season playing under Arthur Smith. But where does Jonnu Smith fit in this defense? Is he tight end 1 or tight end 2? Because those are better numbers. That's more touchdowns and more receiving yards, I think, than Pat Frymuth's ever posted. And granted, that was with Tua Tagovailoa and a Mike McDaniel's offense that's more modern passing and get the ball out type of things, even though they're not as good of a team as the Steelers has been. But is Jonnu Smith tight end 1 now, or is Pat Frymuth tight end 1? And If they're both there, that means you're probably running a lot of 11 personnel. That also makes Darnell Washington tight end 3, which we were just talking about how I like the idea of Darnell Washington as a tight end 2. Finally get him some looks. He's not an advanced of a route runner, but he can still be a weapon for you. Now he's even more of an afterthought in the Steelers offense. He's the 3rd tight end if the Steelers team keeps the current composition it has. But Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith together, does that mean the Steelers don't need wide receiver 2? I don't necessarily think so. I still think they want to go get that wide receiver 2, but I do think it means that you're going to have a hard time as a defense picking who you want to double team as much, because if you try to just take away DK Metcalf with a double team, Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith are going to be tough guys. I mean, those are both tight end 1s really in the NFL right now, and you're going to have to dedicate good coverage men in the middle part of the field to cover both of them if they're on the field at the same time. And both of those guys can get open. Both those guys are athletic. Both those guys have good hands. That's going to be a problem. And then you still have to worry about if whoever the wide receiver 2 is, whether it's Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson, or name a player that they could sign for or draft. Not draft, trade for, excuse me. Trade for or sign. That could be all part of the equation here. And if you're doing that while also having to worry about Aaron Rodgers being smart with the football, and an offensive line that's improving, which we think it will improve, and a run game which is improving with that offensive line, which we think it will improve with Jaylen Warren and rookie Caleb Johnson, this offense could have a lot to offer. There could be a balance there that could be struck for the first time in since 2018. That might be like how good of how far back we have to go back to see like what a true balanced Steelers offense was, because even in Steelers in 2020, right? If we're going back through like the last several offenses, in 2020, they had the 12th best scoring offense in the NFL. It's the highest ranking they've had since 2018, where they were the 6th best offense in the NFL when it came to points scored. But in 2020, they also really didn't run the football. In fact, that was something that Art Rooney kind of harped on at the end of the season. He's like, we didn't run the football. No, they were dead last in yards and yards per attempt at running the football in 2020. He wanted to change that, and so he said, we're going to go out and get a guy that went and got Najee Harris, and that helped their run game numbers, but ultimately didn't change. And I think getting Najee Harris helped them be a playoff team most of the last for the last 5 seasons, but it also didn't make them a Super Bowl contender just yet because they had so many other positions to address. And so what you've seen over the past several years, outside of 2020 when Ben sort of came back and started off hot and then cooled off as the body kind of regressed throughout that season, you've seen an offense that's ranked 27th in 2019 with Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph. In 2020 with Old Man Ben, they ranked 21st. And Kenny Pickett's rookie season, they ranked 26th. Kenny Pickett's second season, they ranked 28th. Last year, they jumped up to 16th with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So could they be approaching a top 10 offense with a Jonnu Smith type addition, even without another wide receiver? I don't know. That's a tough question right now, because Aaron Rodgers, if he gets the right protection, I still think is a cerebral quarterback. He can get the ball out quick. He can find guys. And if you have more guys that can win one-on-ones, that could get off the line, get open quickly, I think that's what DK Metcalf can do. He can get open quickly. I think that Pat Freiermuth can get open quickly. I think Jonnu Smith can get open quickly. Now you have guys at different spots that can be tough coverage assignments in your offense. Do you need to go get that wide receiver too? I wouldn't put it past them at this point. I'm gonna say this right now, at the expense of my own sanity. I would now not put anything past Omar Khan, because he continues to surprise me with move after move. I've said, hey, Steelers fans, pipe down about Terry McLaurin. That's never happening. I don't know anymore. I still think Terry McLaurin stays with the Commanders, but Omar Khan might be willing to deal in and say, like, hey, we'll make something happen for that. We'll bring him here. We'll make him the guy that he's supposed to be. And maybe there's some other move here. Maybe they said Pat Freiermuth for Terry McLaurin. Who knows? That sounds crazy. Yes, that's because all of this sounds crazy, because the Steelers are breaking the mold. Omar Khan is not settling. He's making moves on offense and defense. And I believe me when I say this, I think there is another move coming. And that could be just signing Justin Simmons at safety to solid up the safety room. Julian Blackmon at safety too. He's available as well. It could also mean trading for a wide receiver. Could mean signing a wide receiver. I think Amari Cooper's still available. But the Steelers are adding pieces. They are not settling. They are making moves. I don't think they're all in, because all in would mean they're giving up on their quarterback plans for next year, and they're saying we're going to put all of our resources to the table right now. But I do think they are saying we need to reconstitute some things. We need to redo some things here in Pittsburgh, and we need to add different talent in different places and change up things what we're doing. That to me is what they're signaling right now. And I think there's still more moves to come to be the team that they want to be in training camp, getting ready for the season. We'll cover all that here more on the Locked On Steelers podcast. This has been your emergency episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias, all the same handle every time, at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. I will have a Jalen Ramsey film study out hopefully by tonight, if not by tomorrow morning. And you can always find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those daily episodes as well as bonus content like this episode when crazy things like this happen. Omar Khan, you're a madman. We'll see you again here soon on the Locked On Steelers podcast.